Apparently, Dungeons and Dragons, in an effort to be as inclusive as possible, employs sensitivity readers, aka censors, who decided, you know what, half races are, according to them, inherently racist. So, um, I mean, I guess it's in the name. I'm really sitting here thinking like, okay, so Arwen from Lord of the Rings, who's offended by Arwen? Seriously, like, what is going on? I mean, Dark Sun also is apparently a problematic setting. That one's never gonna get continued. I'm sorry, but at this point, I have to say that Wizards of the Coast seems to have a problem with fantasy. I mean, look, slavery, genocide, those are the what defines evil. Which, by the way, if you look at our own history here, these kind of things were going on all the time. And if you weren't strong and able to oppose the raiders when they were coming, well, you might end up dead, a slave. Your entire people could be massacred. Look, the whole purpose of these stories is to inspire us to make sure this doesn't happen. That's why they are there. But in an effort to sanitize the genre, they're basically thrown out half races, slavery, genocide. How could you tell Lord of the Rings? All right, so Arwen, gone. But also Sauron, he'd enslaved those orcs. If they didn't do what he wanted, they weren't going to eat. And the orcs, furthermore, enslaved the surrounding people and did whatever Sauron wanted. That was what made them evil. And the orcs were coming and they were going to, let's face it, rape. Oh, there's another problematic element. Rape, pillage, murder. Like, that is what defined evil. If we get rid of that, how can we really talk about evil? I'm really reminded a bit of the D&D movie, which, by the way, I did a review on. The writers went out of their way to say they did not want a strong leading man. They chose to emasculate him. That was their words as much as possible. He never holds a sword through the whole thing. He just kind of sits back and plans and is his charming Chris Pine self. And of course, all the fighting was left to all the strong women on the team. Hooray, girl power. To oppose the evil villain, also a woman. Hooray. So Fina in the movie was going to cast a spell which was going to kill all the people in the arena. I guess that gets a pass on not being genocide because I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because they weren't specifically chosen as a class or based on any kind of defining characteristics other than just being in an arena. So, what we're left with after the sensitivity readers have given us an increasingly blander version of one Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, wait, we mean 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons because that is what they have renamed their new edition. It's the same as the prior edition, just different. Hooray. Is left with a lot of corporate doublespeak that's saying, hey, come buy our game, presumably on computer because their demo looks like a LAN party where we're all going to sit around with laptops. And if the Wi Fi goes out, I guess we're not going to be able to play. And we're going to be just moving pieces on the board, rolling perception or to hit, and the computer figures up everything. And it is now that time in my life where I'm going to have to sit back and go, well, in my day, we had half races and we rolled dice for our stats, and if you got low numbers, you just suffered. Those days are gone. And really, I don't see how Dungeons and Dragons is there to really teach any lessons or build any character with this world they've got, where really they've removed the essential defining elements of evil in fantasy and just left us with roll for initiative. If we follow the rules as set forth by Wizards of the Coast sensitivity readers, what would our fantasy world really look like? What kind of stories could we tell? I guess the undead. We're still allowed to not like the undead. They are basically the Nazis of the fantasy realm. So, undead, they're bad. They can be controlled, turned, smash the undead, and maybe the demons. And outside of undead, I suppose devils and demons are still technically evil. Although I'm pretty sure the alignment system's gonna get the kibosh, in which case they're really just extra dimensional beings who think differently. Look, I teach writing, and one of the things that you learn there is that without a strong villain, you don't have an epic hero. It is the epicness, the largeness of the good versus evil struggle that defines the realm of fantasy. Look, folks, I'm just going to say it. Hasbro slash Wizards of the Coast is mismanaging the Dungeons and Dragons brand. It's going to be increasingly bland, and they are appealing to an ever smaller demographic of people who want to essentially sit in safe spaces and worry about trigger words in role playing games like Half Elf. Well, that's not a world I really want to be involved in. It's not a world I really want to role play in. I'm sorry. Count me out. I am not interested in supporting Dungeons and Dragons new 5e. Really, I'm a little on the fence if I want to continue supporting Dungeons and Dragons old 5e. A lot of me says no, that setting's just kind of wither and die, but I did just do a con over the weekend and I sold a fair amount of 5e modules, so gosh, I guess if the audience remains there, I'll kind of remain there under protest. In my games, there will be half elves. For that matter, the module I've written, Palace of the Golden Princess, linked down in the module, which was itself, by the way, a telling of an old 1981 module which got canceled by the sensitivity readers of its day. And in my conception of the rules, I actually had men and women have different stats because I don't know if you notice, we do. I gave the men a bonus to their physical attributes and the women a bonus to their mental attributes. Seems fair to me. I'm sure someone's going to find that problematic. But I think we can expect to see an increasing fragmentation of where you have, let's face it, kind of the younger crowd, way more progressive, concerned about trigger words are going to go off in one direction. And the rest of us, maybe it's just the old folks, although I suspect probably not. Look, I'm doing these cons. I see what kind of things people like. People like strong men, they like beautiful women, and they like strong villains. These are the things that define quality in storytelling, and they are increasingly absent in the sanitized, let's face it, increasingly woke version of Dungeons and Dragons, which has very much lost touch with anything that is going to appeal. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know that Pathfinder Second Edition is going to fare too much better. I really think, honestly, that Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, and Paizo are sitting there trying to out progressive each other. And I'm not really interested in that contest. I'm not interested in the bland storytelling that it engenders. And quite frankly, seeing what people come and buy from me at my booth, a lot of you out there aren't necessarily fans of it either. I think slowly over time, quite frankly, both Dungeons and Dragons and just gonna go ahead and throw in Pathfinder Second Edition are going to kind of wither and die under this increasing pressure of, oh, somebody might be offended out there. What's the future of fantasy tabletop role playing games? Honestly, I don't know, but I know this is not it. I honestly believe that just rolling 3 dice for each stat builds character. We don't have to sit around and worry about what's fair or what's balanced. Some characters are going to be strong, some characters are going to be weak. And that's just the nature of life. But it's those disappointments or the flaws that lead you to be so emotionally involved in the successes that do come your way because you never really thought that they were even possible. I do my best in dealing with members of the millennial generation to be as sensitive as I can. I really have absolute kid gloves. In comparison to like Gen X and the stuff that we used to say to each other, I am so nice. And it's hard as a creative because people bring me their work or they want my feedback. And if I say the least little thing that's negative, they get triggered and they leave. And in part, I would look at the games that they're playing and go, well, yeah, it makes sense that that's going to happen because everything has been so sanitized that if anything exists that's not in this little sanitized safe space world, people don't know how to handle it. The customers of Dungeons and Dragons are being done a disservice. They are not being challenged to actually consider what the face of evil looks like, even in a fantasy game. And in fact, evil seems to be something that they themselves want to get rid of in terms of alignment or even concept. Everything is just going to become a differing viewpoint. And the only bad guys who were really allowed to say, okay, those are bad, are going to be the undead. So let's show up for D&D skeleton smashing. Count me out. I'm sorry. I encourage you to check out my comic book, Palace of the Golden Princess, as well as my module for D&D 5e. I'm about to add a new map and re-update everything, and there's a link down there in the description if you want to check that out. This has been Preston Polta with Lords of Iron. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Take care.